G'day guys, Casey from Lured In Fishing here. Today I would like to show you how to use a bubble float and what kind of rig you will need to set this up correctly on your line. Little bubble float, perfect for suspending small baits. So stuff like worms, maggots, things like that, fishing them off the bottom, fishing them under a bubble float is a super natural and easy way to present them. Really effective, really castable kind of float, and ideal for a lot of freshwater applications as well as some saltwater applications. You'll find your bubble floats come in a few different sizes, a few different colours, and some are hard like this one here, some are soft. Personally, I love the soft bubble floats. The hard bubble floats work just as well. They're just a lot easier to get than the soft ones these days. So soft bubble floats are becoming a thing of the past, getting harder and harder to find. In saying that, in your smaller bubble floats, you will still encounter a few, and if you do see some soft ones in your local tackle shop, make sure you pick them up because they're pretty challenging to come across. What we're going to need is our bubble float, a small hook. This is a size 8 bait holder, which is a great hook for fishing worms. You can use a hook of your desired size and shape depending on the type of baits and fish that you're targeting. Also going to use some silicone float stoppers, which are these little guys here. So, why a bubble float? Bubble floats, really natural presentation. They look like a bubble. So, they're not going to put fish off. They're not going to be too obnoxious. They're not going to look strange or out of place in the water. Really natural presentation. Whether you're lake fishing in super clear water, fishing in a shallow stream, bubble floats are going to look the real deal. The other thing is, bubble floats we can water fill, so that allows us to add a bit of weight to our rig, which gives them fantastic castability. When I say you can water fill a bubble float, typically your bubble floats will have 2 little plugs in them. If you remove these plugs just by pulling them out like so, they're just a soft rubber plug. If we put one of those holes underwater and leave one out of water, that is going to fill up with water really quickly. I like to half fill these, which gives you an ample amount of weight, but it's still going to sit in that level. So if we half fill this, half that float's going to sit underwater. If we fill this 3/4 of the way, 3/4 of that float's going to sit underwater. So be mindful, if you overfill them, you might actually plummet and sink your float. Once we've filled them up, we can press those back in really nice and easily, and that gives us some nice weight to add to our rig so we can cast our bait to our desired location. To set these guys up, really simple. First is we're going to get our silicone float stoppers. So these guys here, really simple, but they look a bit tricky. So you have 3 rows of stoppers there. These little white or clear pieces, they're the part that's important. That's your silicone float stopper. The beads in between act as a good stopper to stop things from going through the holes. A nice hard stopper, but you don't actually need to put them on the line. It is entirely up to you whether you do or not. What we're going to do is at the end of each row, I'm not sure if you can see that, we have a really small little loop of line. We're going to get our main line just here. We're going to go through that loop, and we're going to go a loop-to-loop connection like so. So I've got one loop there to the other loop there. We can then slide one of these stoppers off that first loop, and by pulling our second loop tight, we can slide it onto our line. If you pull these stoppers off this loop without putting them into another piece of line, you will never ever get them back. They have a tiny hole, which is what makes them grab so good. But if we aren't doing a loop to loop like so, we will quickly lose our stoppers. So the other good thing about these little red beads is they act as a little bit of a pusher to help push that stopper up onto our line. Once it's onto our loop, we can push it all the way up until it is just on our main line, and we can pull the rest of our line out. Now be mindful when you do this, you're going to put a nasty little kink in your leader line there. So we are actually going to remove this once I've put everything on the rig before I tie my hook on. So I'm then going to remove that little red bead. You are welcome to leave it there if you like. For this type of rig with the bubble float, wanting it to look as natural as possible, I'm going to take that off. So we have our little silicone float stopper on our line. We can then get our float here, which has 2 holes, one in either side. We go on the side without the plugs. So in from the back, around the side with no plugs, and back in to our other one there. So we've made essentially a loop of line around our float. I'm going to pull that through, and we're going to pull him up the line. Now, when he gets to our stopper there, he's not going any further. What I then like to do is put another stopper underneath our float to stop him from sliding down. Now, you don't have to do this, but personally I find it fixes the float in a nice position, stops it from moving around at all. Really, really nice, effective way to keep it in one place. So once again, line through, double it back. I'm going to go back into the kink I had previously, and I'm going to slide our second stopper up and onto our loop there. So we got that onto our loop. Using that red bead, we're going to slide it up. Slide it right the way up to the base of our float there, and then we're going to take that red bead back off. Now, our float is secure. And by pulling on these beads, sliding them up or down the line, we can actually slide our float up or down the line to give us more or less depth between our float there and our bait. Now, we're going to give ourselves as much as we want, and the benefit is while we're fishing, we can adjust this super easily. Going to then remove that kinked piece of line from where we attached our stoppers earlier, so that nasty kink there, just going to cut that off. Once we've done that, we can attach our desired hook. So, as I said earlier, this is a little size 6 bait holder hook. Great hook for worms. We can go something as small as a 10 or a 14 for mud eyes or maggots. We could go as big as a size, 1 or 2 for some bigger freshwater baits. Be mindful, you will have to select the correct size float for whatever bait's fishing. So a small float like this is suitable for small baits. If we're going to hang a big heavy bait underneath it, we're going to want a bigger float, or we want to fill it up with less water. So, going to go through the eye of our hook. Going to double our line back on itself. We have our tag end here and our main line here. Going to make a loop using our tag end, leaving us with our tag. Nice loop here, and then our main line up the top. Then going to wrap our tag through that loop. 1, 2, 3. Anywhere 3 to 4 times. Going to wet that. I'm going to pull that tight, and then I'm going to slide that down to our hook there. We're going to trim up our tag end, and that way we have our desired hook attached to our rig. We have our little bubble float just there, adding a good amount of weight to our rig, sitting on the surface, really natural presentation with the ability to adjust it up and down our line simply by moving these float stoppers. So I'm going to push that right the way down towards my hook there. So now we have a really short length between the two, or we can slide that up, entirely up to you, and we can do it as we go. If we find ourselves in a position where we need it shallow, we can fish it shallow. If we need it deep, we can fish it deep. That is a really basic, effective bubble float rig, perfect for fish like trout and redfin, and definitely a staple for your general purpose freshwater fishing.